Great morning, world. This is your boy Dragon, and welcome to another Rise Up with Dragon. As a reminder, it is the goal of this podcast, as well as the intention, to remove the blindfolds of your mind so that you can gain access to higher levels of consciousness and tap into your true great potential. We do this with our podcast, our weekly blog called The Dragon's Lair, One from the Vault, as well as our upcoming online courses and books. Welcome to another edition of Rise Up with Dragon.
Great morning, world! Welcome to the Rise Up with Dragon podcast with your host, Dragon!
What's up, folks? Welcome to another 10-minute Rise Up with Dragon. As a reminder, the Rise Up with Dragon podcast and show is sponsored by Karma Mind.
Get into the float state with Karma Mind meditations and gear.
So, great morning, everybody. Very excited that I actually have my daughter in the studio, sitting there on her phone and device, watching me, because she and I are in talks about the beginnings of a book that she's going to write. And we are going to interview her about that on an upcoming show. Let's get right into it. Very, very excited about unpacking this gift that I have to you today, and that is the word measurement. Just as a quick insight, what I do with my journaling exercises, and I teach this in my book, is I'll just take a common word or a thought or a theory or a concept, and I'll put it into the interface response system, meaning I'll back up from it and I'll process it and look at it from different angles. And I just find that when we do that, like we're about to do with the word measurement, it just takes us to a new dimension and a new level of consciousness where we can do what the intention of this podcast is, and that is tap into a higher level of consciousness and find something of value. So before I talk about measurement, I had an idea for a future podcast that you will see, and that's called the body container. And I just want to share that concept with you, and you can carry it with you today and marinate on it. I get a lot of feedback from you guys, and I love it. But basically, the body container is going to be about this idea that the body, right, acts only as a container for something much, much bigger. So that is going to be an awesome rise up. But let's talk about measurement. So measurement, I always like to look up like the normal definition for things, but measurement is the act of identifying and qualifying the extent, size, capacity, or amount of something. So that's the measurement that you are used to. So we use things like calculators, rulers, and scales and get an exact measurement, or that's the whole idea of measuring things. We get an exact measurement of things. However, when it comes to things like success and faith and religion, we then require parameters that help define the markers that we want to measure. But measurement starts to increase in its margin of error. This is where we get kind of into the fun stuff. Measurement starts to increase in its margin for error, meaning more chance of error, as we move into the realm of things that require our judgment and our perception. So just stop for a second and think about that. Whenever we're measuring something, and it requires our judgment and perception, all of a sudden we're changing the tool that we're using for measurement, and it's no longer an exact science. And the reason why I want to share this thought with you today is because I think that you're probably thinking that you're exact in your measurement of things that are in your perception, but I'm showing you that maybe it is not an exact science. So how do we measure things like our perceptions and judgment of things, that we interface with every day? Think about that for a second. How do you measure, now that you know what measurement is, things like judgment and perceptions? Well, taking into account that the tool for measuring these things, this is really cool. I talked about rulers and scales and calculators. Well, the tool that we use to measure things like judgment and perception is actually the human brain. And this can get complicated as well as unexact. I don't know if that's a word, but unexact. So let's unpack measurement in this sense. So Try to follow me here because this is the blessing. This is the gift right here. And I'll read it twice. So perception is a judgment of something using the human mind as the tool of measurement. This is implicit in the goal of achieving accuracy. So think about that. Perception and judgment of something uses the human mind as the tool of measurement. And when I say it's implicit, it's very, very important in your goal of achieving accuracy. If you're judging or perceiving something, I would assume that you want to be accurate in your judgment, and that's why people would say you have good judgment. So this is only perceived as a problem when we realize that we've been perceiving and judging things with a tool, right? Once you realize, holy shit, my brain is the tool that I'm using. And if you're unaware of that, well, you're going to become aware of it right now. So it's a problem when we realize that we've been perceiving and judging things with this tool, AKA our mind, that's been coerced and programmed by forces that perhaps have no vested interest in supporting our unique goals and dreams coming true. So I speak a lot about mother, father, teacher, preacher, right? So if we're using this brain, and I'm pointing to my brain for podcast listeners, if we're using that as the tool, and now we step back from that, the way we do with the interface response system, and we recognize that it's been programmed by outside in forces, mother, father, teacher, preacher, and society, perhaps now we can recognize the reason why it's inaccurate and also not necessarily in support of what it is that we want. So listen to that. Listen to that again and again and again. Very, very important to understand that. So the moment that this makes sense to you, and the moment it makes sense to you is when you stop back and just recognize it. So cognitive distancing is a thing that I'm really big on. I teach in my book the idea of just saying, right? And that is just you stepping back from the stimulus, like Viktor Frankl talks about, and taking a moment before you react and respond and create, and give value to something. So think about that. Listen to it. The moment this makes sense, you will level up and you'll go from, basically from a level 1 to a level 2, because now you have the awareness and higher level of consciousness that can observe, pause, and challenge your perception. That's where the level up comes from. The level up comes from the new awareness that something might not be what you thought. And from that level of awareness, it warrants and puts value behind a challenge of it. I love that. So in the interface response system, when challenging our perceptions and judgment, our goal, what's the goal of challenging our perceptions and a judgment? Our goal is to seek out our desired truth and minimize error. Now, we might not ever really find out what the truth is. And I don't know if we could handle the truth. We're just looking for our desired truth. And you know what desired truth is? The truth that supports our dreams, right? It doesn't have to be true, but if it's in support of my dreams, that's the as much truth as I want. But I want to minimize error. And when we talk about minimizing error, this is helping us stay on track and also not be distracted, or as Nir Ayel calls it, become indistractable. So we challenge our perceptions and judgments to see if they're actually true or unfactual. I put up a post the other day on Instagram about unfactual things. So that's why you challenge things. And when you're looking at something to see if it's true or unfactual, once again, we don't know what the ultimate truth is, but the only truth we need when we're challenging and assessing something is whether or not it is in support of what it is that we ultimately desire. So for me, it's about family and health and exploration of the world and things like that. So as soon as I challenge something, a thought or a stimulus, and it has nothing to do with what I want, boom, it's out. I don't give it value anymore. So access whether your perception and judgment are an asset that supports your desired state and life or not. That's what you're really doing, is you're looking at your perception and judgment of something and saying, is this an asset? Is this an asset that supports what I want? And that's what we want to do. So and we do that in order to do two things. We must recognize these two things. So the tool is not exact. So the brain, this is what we have to recognize. The tool, the human brain that we're using to measure judgment and perception. It's not an exact tool, and it's interchangeable, right? It's interchangeable. It could change at any time. So just recognize that, because that's the tool you're using. Like a ruler. Imagine if you're using a ruler to measure a distance, but you knew that it wasn't exact and it could change at any time, and it could be affected by someone else. So that's your brain. Second, your initial programmed perceptions and responses might not even be yours, right? They might not even be yours, and they might not be in support of your desired state. So this validates when you recognize that. That's the value, is when you recognize that, it validates challenging them. It gives you a reason to challenge them. That's why we teach kids to challenge everything and ask why. So challenge your perceptions and judgments of the things that you interface with today, and choose the ones that support your dreams. And then my last question is, make sense. So I love and appreciate you all. This has been another 10-minute Rise Up. I hope you have an amazing day, and challenge everything today.